Well, welcome to the last section of the first annual Odette Leadership Symposium. For the last 2 days, the theme has been, there are no limits, unleash the leader in you. Over these 2 days, you have heard from 10 different leadership experts on important topics from communication to leadership intangibles, from mentorship to managing your inevitable career transitions, to the use and implications of social media, the good and the bad, from the importance of etiquette and the need to always adapt to change. All important topics if you want to be a proven leader. And you've heard from proven leaders who have been there and done that in their careers. If you were paying attention the last 2 days, absorbing what you heard, and even more importantly, have made a commitment to yourself to implement some or much of what you've learned in the last 24 hours, then you have made a major step forward on your leadership journey during the last 2 days. Now, our final discussion in a panel format today is called Challenges of Leadership. To help me convey this subtopic, I have 4 excellent panel members with me. First of all, in the middle here, Diane Reko. Now, Diane has already delivered sessions on recreating the wheel, which she clearly has done as the CEO and president of Reko International. Also, I'm delighted to say that Diane is an Odette grad. Today, her company, the Reko International Group, performs precision machining, designing, and produces complex tooling and testing for the automotive industry. I asked each of our panel members for their leadership point of difference, and this is what Diane told me. She is a female, non-technical leader in a very technical organization. Welcome, Diane. Our second panel member I'm also pleased to introduce is Leah. Did I get that right? Leah Eichler. Leah is a celebrated columnist with a weekly Women at Work column that takes a fresh approach, a fresh look at issues women in Canada and the United States face in today's modern workforce. She is also founder of the Femonomics, a digital real media company. And I was asking her about that name last night. It sounds to me like a kind of film noir with a kind of some kind of spy thing. So maybe you could explain what exactly you do with that digital platform. Mike, that sounds like a good idea. Leah's leadership point of difference is, you'll like this one, be fearless and audacious and ask for what you want. So welcome, Leah, and I hope we're going to hear some of that audaciousness on the panel today. For the men on the panel, first of all, Doug Smith, here on just right to my left, who is also an Odette grad. His sessions had a really catchy title, Winners Who Get the Job and Why. Doug has a very impressive resume with senior HR jobs at Ford, Motor Company, Uniroyal, the Woodbridge Group. He worked with Ward Hall International, one of the top global search firms in the world. Today he's president of James Smith and Associates. Now, he's been traveling a lot, and so we didn't catch up with what his point of difference was, but I thought, geez, with this resume, I'm going to take a guess at it. So I imagine what his leadership point of view might be is his ability to correctly assess people and to identify potential leaders. Welcome, Joe. And our final panel member this morning is truly a North American icon. Now, if you were to look up the word icon in the dictionary, it would define icon as a person or thing regarded as a representative symbol of something. And today, that is clearly Harry Rosen. Harry is iconic as he is a representative symbol of not only superb customer service, but the first to recognize trends in men's fashion and retailing. Today, Harry is the executive chairman of the retail chain that bears his name. Harry Rosen Inc. operates 16 of the much better menswear stores in 7 markets in Canada and is the market leader in all they do. Harry's point of difference, he interacts with customers, he watches, he listens, and he's very open to learning. Personally, as a loyal customer of Rosen's, from my socks to my suits, for over 24 years, I can sure attest to that. There have been many Saturdays, if you were part of the session before, you know that if he was in Toronto today, what he'd be doing this Saturday morning? He'd be working on the floor with his staff and servicing his customers. Harry, it's a real pleasure having you with us this morning. And just as it is a pleasure to have Diane, Leah, and Jim. On behalf of our audience this morning, thank you for giving up your valuable time. Now I'm going to get the room warmed up a bit by, I'm going to mention some questions that I'm going to throw to the panel, and there's going to be plenty of time for you to ask questions as well. Now, first question to all of the panel. Leah, we'll let you go first. Odette is striving to create 21st century leaders. What does it mean to you to be a 21st century leader?
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
No, you've got to
All right.
take over on that.
I'll speak loudly.
Very loudly.
Hopefully you can hear me at the back.
Hold on.
Oh,
Might be off.
just give it to her.
How is Diane? How's this going? Okay, we'll be passing around a lapel mic.
Yeah, just until we get them to fix it. Yeah.
There were two really important points that came up when I first thought of this question. And in today's marketplace, I really don't think there is an opportunity or there is room to be protectionist. And collaboration and looking for strategic partnerships, I come from the media industry where the term strategic partnerships is bandied around a lot, is a significant trend. You can no longer guard your turf, and you need to really look for opportunities. And I think those who view the world as full of opportunities rather than full of closed doors are more specifically well-placed to advance. But critically, and I do go into a lot of organizations and speak to a lot of people inside companies, agility is something that we need to remember to bring with us. And I've worked in large bureaucracies, and now I run my own company, so I know agility very well. But don't get bogged down in bureaucracy. Being a slave to short-term objectives is really never a key to success. So get yourself out of that framework if you find yourself stuck in it and move on to something else.
I thought that was a great answer. It's not only a personal answer, but it's a great answer for countries. As Canada is negotiating, trying to negotiate a deal with the European Common Market, companies can't be counted on protectionists. It's an international world. The world is flat, so you have to behave both corporately and as an individual that way. Harry, 21st century leader?
I think that one of my legacies in our company is the development of people. We've been able to perpetuate a culture that started back in 1954, and to my mind was present in all of our interactions with customers throughout the country. Would you mind posing your question again?
Sure. So I think you're on the way there, Harry. We talk about we want to create 21st century leaders. How would you create a 21st century leader as you turn it over a succession, as you are turning over succession to Harry Rosen's?
I'm not the best judge of people. I'm rather critical, I would say. But somehow or other, I've found people that I respect and like to associate with, constantly learn from them. And I take this attitude in my relationship with our staff. And as I say, I think we have a good organization steeped in people. But I think what's very important in my business, anyway, in my business history, is a perception of everything that's occurring that would affect consumption. And I find that there's stimulation for me in circulating broadly throughout the world, talking to other merchants, watching the consumer in particular. I think that my interaction with customers, which is still current, is a valuable tool in directing or giving direction anyway, or help to assistance to my son and to, well, no one else at the present. So, I got an overflow of information anyway to offer. In general, I think that as a merchant, being circumspect and seeing everything that goes on around you is vital to doing a capable job with customers. And you've got to remain current. And There's always new competitors going to enter and redefine the marketplace. And you've got to continue to look at youth in particular, young people.
Well, two messages there I heard. One, I think it reinforces Dr. Davis's thing about wisdom, being open to everything, and you're doing that with your travels and watching best practices with other companies. And the other thing is change, and change is inevitable. Diane?
Thanks. I believe that to be a 21st century leader is probably in a lot of ways not so different from what it's always been to be a leader. I think you have to respect the people around you, those that you're leading. I think giving them an opportunity, and as Harry mentioned, developing the people within your organization so that they can lead as well someday is really important. And I think developing yourself is probably the third thing, and I congratulate all of you students for being here today, because that's certainly a good step in doing that, even outside of what would be the normal channels of your job or your position as a student.
So this time we're going to hear from Doug Smith and not Jim Smith.
It's only Jim Smith when I owe someone money. As Richard was saying at the beginning, my business is predicated on looking for and assessing individuals who have traits that the client needs in their respective organizations. So I guess to a certain extent, it's to seek out and assess the business model in many respects. And so touching on that and building off of some of what you've already heard, that in my experience is that what business today is grappling with, which is what our society is dealing with, and you have to find the skills in that, that is to look for untraditional approaches to dealing with traditional problems. The formulas of the past don't work, and so companies, my clients, are looking for leaders that know how to think outside the box and can take a more untraditional approach to solving issues, because the traditional ones no longer work in one form or another. And how do you do that? I look for whether or not they have an attitude that says, I'm still learning, and that I'm making mistakes, and that I never have enough knowledge and wisdom to be able to deal with these issues.
So I'm going to throw the next question open to everyone but Harry, because Harry's going to get his own question in a minute. So to the rest of the panel, becoming a leader is both a process and a journey. Briefly, what should that process and journey look like to an individual if they want to be successful? Process and journey, what should it look like?
Dr. Davis said something this morning that really resonated with me, and I think it's a trait we forget about quite a bit, and it means it's very important to be multifaceted. Many of us, and I've been guilty of this in the past, have focused on developing expertise at the expense of everything else. And having a variety of experiences and a variety of insight is really beneficial and very critical. And just generally being an interesting person, like finding those interests and having something to talk about is really a key to the process.
Okay, pass it down to Diane.
I think the process starts with learning two things. One, about yourself, and secondly, what's going on in the world around you. And part of learning about yourself is, as Dr. Davis said this morning, learning about your weaknesses and working on ways to develop those and strengthen them and try to offset them if you can. And I think that if you just keep repeating that process, the journey will be there for you, because you'll see if you try something new to give you an edge or to improve something that you don't do well, you'll get the feedback about whether it was successful or not, and that will become the journey.
I guess the way I would look at it is that the journey, this is a journey that you're going to be on that you never end. It's always going to be one of learning. And if you think that your learning is done after 4 years here, it is only the beginning. It's a stepping stone. I know it sounds like a trite phrase, but that's what I look for. And I think it's really not a question of what you have enough to know. You never have enough to know what you need to do, number one. And because of that, I think if you continue to learn, you become aware of the bigger picture in a much broader perspective. And don't just think about it as your functional silo that you're in. I think thirdly, what I look for is I want to see a journey that's filled with mistakes as well as successes. You learn and you're judged by your mistakes and your failures, in many respects more than you're judged by your successes. And in my mind, I think in some respects, it's a trite phrase, but adversity builds character, and I think success can build your ego. And I think you need a little bit of both, but I think that it's important to not feel afraid to make mistakes. And you don't make stupid mistakes. Smart people make stupid mistakes, but they're not stupid, they're just mistakes. Stupid people make stupid mistakes the second time around, and you have to learn from them. And I guess lastly is network, professionally and personally, over the course of your career.
Okay, so Harry, a special one for you. You hired a University of Windsor BCom grad many years ago, the late Bob Humphrey, who was key to turning around the fortunes of your business. What unique leadership traits did he bring to your company that are still relevant today?
Bob was not only educated in finance, but he was a great people person. It was natural for him. And he brought qualities to our relationship that complemented me. I was the merchant, more or less the dreamer. Bob was the guy, feet solidly on the ground, was loved by the people in our organization, was really, in that respect, the public face of the organization. And I can only say that if anyone is involved in selecting people that at least they can work with, find people that complement you, that probably make up for your weaknesses, balance the act.
So just as Diane said, things that I asked about 21st century leaders, a lot of the basics have been here for 100 years. You go back and look at books, you look at the great leaders of the world over a couple of centuries, and there's some commonality. So to Leah and Doug, what was the best leadership decision you ever made and why?
Ironically, the best leadership decision I ever made was to leave a fabulous leadership role and start my own company. It took a lot of courage, but I realized how complacent I had become in my existing role and how comfortable it was. And as I mentioned privately earlier, there's been not a thing in the last year that has been comfortable. And I realized how hungry I've been for that, and I've grown tremendously as a person and as a leader.
So Phenonomics, you don't want to tell us about that? Is that part of the courage?
That is part of courage. So it's Femonomics, so that is the holding company, that's the media company. And the idea behind Femonomics is a content portal for professional women. I come from a media background. I know how the media targets women, and I didn't like it. So Femonomics is my way of changing the conversation about women in business. And Femonomics did produce Rally, which is our mobile collaboration platform that's in beta right now, and it's also a social media application marketed to women, specifically in the consumer space, or will be, that encourages acts of collaboration and relationship building inside enterprises and publicly as well.
And it's going to be audacious.
It will be audacious.
Okay. Doug?
I guess to a certain extent, the best decision I've made, I'm not quite sure what it is because I haven't stopped making decisions in some respects as I go on my journey. But I think in terms of what I've done to this point, if I can frame this, I'm going to go back in time to the late 80s, early 90s. I've been in search. I've just come out of a very top, high-profile, high-visibility corporate position. Very sexy, relatively young for my professional group at that point in time. Got into search and made a decision to move from Toronto to the States. The professional search business in Canada is populated with an old boys network. It's small, it's a club, and I was a youngster in relative terms trying to break into that, and I said, no, this isn't going to be right. So I saw NAFTA being negotiated. There was going to be bilateral trade that was going to open up between Canada and the US. I had done my grad work in the States. I didn't say a lot, but I drank Canadian beer, so I was an international consultant in some respects. So I made a decision to move to Chicago. No friends, no professional network. My daughter was 6 weeks old. My son was 18 months. the immigration laws being what they are, I had to serve indentured servitude to my current employer because if I left them, I'd have to leave the country. And so it was not an easy time, but what it did is it forced me, really, I think, to figure out what I was going to be all about, what value I was going to bring, and that I was going to make my mark. And history will determine whether I've made some marks, there's no question about that. I'm not sure what the tombstone will read, if that's positive or negative, but it allowed me to be different, and I wound up managing people that were older than me. They were the age of my father. And I was, if anyone knows professional services people, it's like herding cats anyway. And it was a real stretch for me, but I made mistakes, and I wouldn't change that decision at all.
You know, I like the question, you know, what's the highlight of your life? And you say, I don't know, I don't think I've had it yet. I mean, because there's going to be more, so I'm sure there will be. But maybe with the next question, maybe you've made your last mistake. So to Diane and Harry, what was the worst leadership decision you ever made, and how did you recover from it? Diane?
Interestingly, the worst leadership decision I made was the decision that I deferred making. I was a bit paralyzed with fear, you could say. I had an individual in the company at a relatively high level that was not performing well, but upon whom we were very dependent at the time. And my recovery started with my WPO because I raised the issue. I have a problem. I have a person that's not performing, but I can't get rid of them. And they set me straight pretty quickly, that group of women. Many of them had been through similar circumstances, told their stories, and sort of inspired the courage that I needed to take action. But quite honestly, not making the decision was the worst decision, because being in limbo for a long time is not good for your business.
So Harry, it's tough to imagine with the successful chain of Harry Rosen stores and the quality that they are. I guess you have made mistakes. Maybe you'd share one with us.
A few. I had designs on entering the U.S. market and had negotiated a lease on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, which is the miracle mile and the place to be when it comes to retailing. And I reached, the property was flipped from a developer to another developer who wanted to start negotiations all over again. And I decided that despite that I would not go through that type of thing. And I instead was wooed by some people called Pyramid in Syracuse to open a store in Western New York in the Walden Galleria, which is a blue-collar market where we struggled for 10 years to make a penny profit. When we could have put that same effort into our location in Chicago, even though we would have paid a higher rent and probably had windows on the world and the ability to launch our business in the United States in a meaningful way.
Okay, so that's hopefully that's warmed you up a bit, and hopefully you got some energy and some questions left. So I'm going to throw it open to the room. Fire away, right here.
This is a question that came to me throughout the whole leadership seminar, and I think it's a very important question. I've worked for many, many years. We've had numbers of different leaders, and the one thing that I always wondered about is how to maintain the energy of leadership throughout a long career. Because it just seems to me that when you're leading, you take on all this responsibility, and you're really carrying leader, you start to accept it. And there's so much weight that gets on you. How do you maintain the energy to take the weight of that responsibility year after year after year? And can a leader do that? Do you need a break?
Okay, the question was, how do you maintain energy through your career? Dr. Noel Tishy, who teaches at Michigan, believes in 5 things, and one of them is energy, the need to have energy. So, board, panel, how do you keep your energy up? Harry, why don't we start with you? You're 81 years old now. You've been working since before you started your store in 1954.
I'm still as passionate as I was when I started. That's my wife.
I didn't know this was going to be X-rated. So.
Passion as an individual genes, their DNA. I think that the light can go out and it can be dissipated. But people that are circumspect and looking at the evolving life that they see, watching all the events that occur in the world, they're constantly curious and constantly challenged to keep up and learn. And as a result of that, your name, as I say, energy, along with the stimulus of what goes on in the world, drives the entrepreneur, to my mind, successful people, even though they may be in an organization. Passion, to my mind, is a part of your DNA.
So Doug, you're traveling a lot, and travels, when you have to travel, you think it's sexy, but going through security and all the things you have to go through today, that's very tiring. Time zones, different diets, different hotels. How do you keep your energy up?
The copious amounts of, I don't drink coffee. So Canadian Kit Kat bars, awesome, especially the big chunks. But no, seriously, there's not positive energy and there's negative energy. And I find it pretty funny. I mean, the negative energy are type A people that are just pushing all the time. I look for those that, and I feel the same way about positive energy. If you get to a point in your life where you really like what you do, and what you do is not work, the energy source doesn't have a bottom to it. You just, because people say, boy, you're going all the time, you're going this, what do you do when you're not working? I said, I don't even consider what I do work. I'm very fortunate to say that I really like what I do and I don't consider it to be work. So because of that, I think the energy becomes self-generated in that respect.
There's two ways to look at energy. That you possess energy yourself, so you can go through the long days, handle the travel, and that a lot of that depends on the passion that Harry talked about. But it's also being fit. Can you handle those days? And also energy. You have to be, as a leader, when you walk into that room, you have to generate energy in that room. I've always never understood that when someone says, "How are you?" and the answer is not bad. I never have got that. And you know, I graduated with a man who said everything was excellent, and I, you know, it wasn't always, but as a leader, you have to show that energy and have that positive. So how about some more questions? You can ask them of the individual or the group. Right here, nice and loud.
Describe your leadership tenure in one word and why.
Diane?
One word.
One word. For everyone else, I'm buying time for everyone else here.
Transformational.
Wow, good word. Okay. Oh yeah.
I would say visionary.
Visionary? Wow. Harry, one word to describe your leadership style.
My leadership style?
One word.
How about two?
Harry Rosen gets two.
I would say learning.
Oh, okay. Learning. Doug?
Relentless.
I'm going to use two words too, vision and values. Okay, great question. Right here. Shannon.
This question is specific for Diane. So you come from a non-technical background in a technical area. What are some of the biggest struggles that you found being able to go through that process?
Sort of the obvious ones, I guess. You don't really know if someone's telling you the truth or not sometimes, because they're talking about an issue that you really don't understand. So that's a big challenge. As I said in my talk, it gets back to trust. That team that's around you, are they being straight up with you about what's really going on? I try to educate myself, and thankfully there are some trade publications that are written at a level that I can still comprehend. And as each day goes, and the more I ask people, the more I learn. But that's probably the biggest challenge is not understanding certain specifics of a discussion. It requires a decision ultimately.
Great question, Shannon. Yes, Vincent. Nice try. You're going to have to yell at us.
I'll yell, it's fine.
Turn it on.
Just turn it up.
Okay, just yell.
inspirational leadership moments in my life was being led by a bad leader, really just not a good leader. And I wanted to find out if you've ever had such experiences or anecdotally been realized, well, I know I won't do this.
So bad leaders, lessons learned. I guess, today we talk a lot about best practices. I guess you're asking about worst practices.
Yes.
Doug, kind of right up your alley. You probably interviewed a lot of bad leaders.
The scorecard for good and bad leaders has changed for me over life. And so you have to get behind the wins. And so you find out that the wins weren't necessarily what you want to see, what I would look for in a leader. And so there's some people are driven by expected behavior. And leaders are expected to deliver results, and so they rationalize whatever decisions they have and actions they have to take to get the results. It tends to be somewhat short-term in our society, and so I think what we look for is people that tend to look at things from a longer-term play in terms of their decisions and actions that they take. Because it's easy to do a next quarter win, but it's the lasting impact that we have.
Dan, Leah?
Being clear about objectives is difficult for a lot of people. And for some leaders, and I work for one in particular, it's very easy to try and chase different objectives at a given time. But when you're passing that message on to your team, it can be very muffled. And if your employees don't know what's expected of them on a regular basis, it can be a very jarring experience. In several meetings with this particular manager, I would say, for my particular newsroom, I wanted a mission statement. I wanted one line in the office that said, every day we need to adhere to this mission. And for 6 months, I couldn't get a mission statement, and for me, that was really telling.
Interesting. Okay, keep going. Right here, this young woman right here. No, go ahead. You're on your way.
Dr. Davis this morning talked about how being a good leader, you have to be able to control your emotions. So I'm just wondering what you guys do in particular to control your emotions, to not show them.
So, you're referring to Dr. Davis's intangible social maturity, and how do you control your emotions? Anyone want to take a shot at that? Diane? The person who gives you the bad technical information?
That's a tough one. I think, I hate to stereotype myself, but I think to a certain extent as a female, I tend to be a little bit more emotional than some of the men that I work with. But in some ways, I think I'm an atypical female there too. So I think it's beneficial to have emotions, clearly empathy, for example. I've had situations where I've given employees hugs and cried with them because they lost a parent or whatever. And I've jumped up with joy when others are expecting their first child. And I don't think that's a bad display of emotion in the workplace. It's who I am. It's part of my leadership, and it seems to be working so far. But I think that in situations where you're very frustrated and angry, you do need to rein it in, because there really isn't a place for explosion in the workplace, at least not in my mind in the current workplace. So.
Harry, one of your challenges, when you went out of your first store, you said this morning that it was tough for you not to be in the store. So when you go into a store and see one of your sales people not doing a good job and you get angry with them because they're not servicing, how do you handle that?
Well, I can rationalize that two ways. The natural me would be impulsive and want to chastise that person. But I know that with experience that doesn't work. So I have to seek an opportunity, either directly or indirectly, to correct that and be consistent with our policy so that the message gets through. So I guess I've done a lot of things wrong. I've learned a few things about human nature, and I try to back away and be sensitive to issues when they arise. And stay calm, and tackle.
Okay, the young woman behind, almost second in line there. Yes.
Okay, based on your presentations, what main message would you like students attending this symposium to take to their peers?
So give me the last part. Based on the presentations, what main message would you
Would you like students to take to their peers?
take to their peers? And why do you say peers? To the ones who couldn't get in?
Yeah.
Okay. What main message would you like to take? Doug?
You missed a good bet.
And if you didn't hear that, you missed a good bet. Not you, because you signed up.
Right.
Next year it'll be 300 again. Get in early.
Yeah. And you won't tell them everything you heard, and tell them that they should have come. I'm being somewhat facetious, but I think it's important that they understand that what's going on in this experience this first time around is unlike a lot of the learning experiences that they've had at the university up to this date. Hopefully they'll build upon it, and it would be, if the cake was built or baked by the university, this is the icing.
So we can go to another question, or someone really feel they want to give an answer here to this one?
I think that you should have an inventory of knowledge right now that you should feel very good about. And how to describe it to your peers, I can only say that it's unfortunate you missed such a learning opportunity.
Two good answers. Okay, I'm going to go way to the back here. Got a lot of questions still coming up. Nice and loud, please.
How important as a leader is employee engagement, and how do you keep employees engaged, particularly in a unionized environment?
Two questions. Engagement's very in right now with the attitude surveys. In fact, I think there's an award now for the most engaged companies. Anyone want to take a cut at that?
That's a huge challenge as someone admittedly who is creating a mobile application that promotes collaboration and does offer higher employee engagement. Employee engagement is critical, and having managed a union operation, a union-based operation, can be very challenging, and there were some very dark days, but understanding what motivates people is really critical, and it's not necessarily paycheck. It's, there is recognizing good employees and recognizing what they bring to the table is really key. Everyone loves to be appreciated. And if you take the time to appreciate the really supportive people on your team, it does go a very long way.
Okay, we're right into reading week. We're going to take two more questions, and I have one last question for, who am I going to ask? This young woman way back there for our second last question.
I was just going to say, we've learned a lot of things within the last few hours, within the 24 hours, about leadership and how to lead, what it takes to lead. I'm just saying, within an interview, because a bunch of us are students here, we're approaching graduation, looking for jobs and such. Within an interview, what kind of things would you be looking for us to portray our leadership within that time constraint? So like, what are the things that you look for? What things should we present to the table within that time?
So some interviewing advice, and what better person than Doug can answer that one?
Did you sit through our session? One of our sessions?
Unfortunately.
Well, sorry, okay. Seriously, I think that what you're looking for, the reality is in where you are in your curve of life, is that the leadership that you would be able to demonstrate would be difficult to portray through work experiences for the most part. It's going to be through what you may have been involved with from an extracurricular activity that expanded your learning experience here at the school. And that could be both club-related activity as well as the volunteerism, because a lot of organizations are looking for that rounded employee and what they bring to the party. And the task that you'll have will be able to articulate that in a meaningful way with good points to the interviewer that you're talking to.
So the University of Odette has not only beefed up its curriculum on the leadership side, but if you look at all the things that you can get involved in, from the Commerce Club to Student Council to debate, there's a lot of ways to really add meat to your resume, and so take advantage of them here. Last question. Reko. Yes.
My question is, it's my position that leadership is less about title than it is about those intrinsic and intangible things that we've been hearing about for the last 24 hours. If you agree with that statement, how do you cultivate that leadership in people that report up through you, or perhaps in your equality within the corporation?
Anyone want to take a shot at that? Diane's gonna do it.
In my humble opinion, because I'm not an expert on that, I think that catching people that work for you doing things that display leadership and pointing that out to them and saying, wow, that really showed great leadership and I'm proud that you're part of our team, goes a long way. And hopefully that's a start point to make them thinking about whatever else they need to develop a little further.
Okay, I'm going to ask the last question. This panel has had great success. You've heard the resumes already, and they've, had their good things and bad things. What finally, let's see, I have 2 questions here. I'll go with this one. What was the one thing about leadership that do you wish you knew when you were first starting out in your career? The one thing when you were first starting out in your career. So Harry, when you were first starting your store, what was the one thing you wish you knew then that you know now?
I was very tough on people. I did not understand how to manage people. I had to learn. I learned the hard way. I had turnover, unnecessary turnover. I had some people that went on to be successful on their own. Weren't successful for me. I know that I failed in bringing the qualities out of them that they possess. In general, I think people management is at the root of just about any kind of enterprise if you want to be successful. And I still believe that leaders are born, not made.
There's another seminar right there. So it's all about, Harry's answer, it's about the process, it's about learning. Leah?
I didn't realize how critical it was to develop stronger business relationships, especially outside of my industry. I was very focused on doing the best job in my very specific job and making sure that my direct managers were very happy with me and putting in those extra hours and really trying to just be a very good student at work. And I would have benefited a lot more if I could have stepped away from the job for a bit and cultivated those relationships.
Pass it down.
I guess in a similar vein to what Leah said, I would agree that if I could turn back the clock, what I wish I had known was how important it is to spend time with other leaders and other people in general, because you can learn so much from them, and it really will accelerate your learning curve.
I guess to a certain extent, when I look back, that my definition of what a leader was is very different than what it is today. I just assumed that a leader was someone who had a title that was supervisor or manager. And I guess over the years, what I've now discovered is that, as Terry was inferring, you've heard from others, is that leadership is really earned, it's not bestowed. If it's bestowed in that context, it's given to you by the people that are willing to follow you, not by an organization that gives you a title.
Okay, thanks again, panel. You were very instructive, and I hope you saw a lot of teachable points, heard and saw over the slide presentations, teachable points of view. A couple of closing remarks, and I'm going to stress things that you've already heard, but they can't be stressed enough. That if you want to be a great leader, it is a process, but it's not a passive process. You won't become the successful 21st century leader by sitting back and waiting for it to come to you. So right now, absorb everything that you can while attending university. And once you're out in the workforce, don't ever quit learning. Being a great leader will take you your entire life. I opened my book with a quote from the late John Maxwell, and I really think it's kind of fitting for today. I think that here it goes. Leadership doesn't develop in a day, it takes a lifetime. So thank you very much, and we hope we see all of you next year at the second annual. Get your tickets early.